academic collaboration and research in the world on fire. That's the theme for the 19th International Conference, Connecting Research, Advancing Peace, Interdisciplinary Research for a Better World. My name is Jan Jansen, and I will have a keynote on this topic. For that, I will take an example. Diversity in contemporary economic systems in the multipolar world. I'm an emeritus senior election researcher from Hong University in the Netherlands, and my special interests are in economics, finance, supply chain finance, and the didactic of economics. I will guide you through the presentation with 5 topics: the introduction, the theory of economic systems, multipolarity, sustainability and circularity in business, and finally conclusions and discussion. To characterize the world in fire, the world on fire is, well, typically maybe at this moment, we have a lot of, let's say, wars going on with global impact. But we also live now in a world where not only one country is leading. We see the BRICS countries as a new power: China, India, Southeast Asia, South America, besides the traditional, let's say, leading countries in the world like the United States and Europe of the European Union. We also see increasing social injustice in the world, large differences in wealth. We also observe environmental issues, a lot of pollution. The world is typically so-called VUCA, volatile, uncertainty, ambiguity, and chaotic. And in that, we also survive with our academic research networks. And that will be part of my talk today. An equilibrium or equilibria, the plural aspect in academic networks, is about balancing. It can be, from a personal point of view, picking up and dropping off information, knowledge, but also in a network, let's say, based on institutions. And for that, the long-term equilibrium is the dropping off should be equal with the picking up. I will use my own network of more than 25 universities and institutions to show you how this works. And I'll use it also in my academic essay on economic systems. So I'm in the middle of a very interesting network built up over more than 30 years of higher education with a lot of universities, but also networks. And you can have a view at the spaghetti that is plotted over here. Not all of them are there in my network, but the most relevant ones. I will continue with the theory of economic systems. It's part also of a short essay I wrote for the conference. But I will use it as an example to show you how this works in a academic network. What is an economic system? A long time ago, Grossman provided us with a nice definition. He plotted it there like the institutional framework in which the economic process is performed. The institutional framework is an interesting word, especially the word institution. It is not only the laws, but also the habits, the culture, and stuff like that. And the allocation carried out in the economic process is based on a few questions: what to produce, where, how much, and how. And that is the basic question of every, let's say, economic system, every country, to allocate resources for production. And for that I use a circular flow model with input, throughput, output. And in this, let's say, overview, I added some new things like how to deal with waste and how to recycle waste, to reuse waste, and also to use as, well, not so much anymore virgin materials. In the input, traditionally 4 factors of production, the throughput, combining the factors of production, and then the output, spending, and then we see the well-known GDP equation, consumption, investment, the government spendings, and the net exports. And this is, let's say, the cornerstone of how the economic process normally is dealt with. But there are some new ideas about it, and I will come later on that as well. Based on Grossman's, let's say, original publication in 1974, we see that there was a fully centrally planned economy versus a fully free market economy. Maybe both, let's say, aspects of the spectrum didn't exist, but more or less. And in between, we see mixed economies with market socialism, the social market economy, often called the Randers economy, and the Anglo-Saxon market economy. And the criteria were quite clear, based on ownership of production factors, the allocation mechanism, how efficient production is, the sovereignty of consumers, how to deal with externalities, the distribution of income and wealth, and especially the political freedom. That has an impact on how you look at, let's say, the production factors. We see also a lot of new ideas about that, based on, let's say, Gleeson-White, the 6 capitals. That's the column in the middle. But also the triple P approach by Fullerton and later adapted by the Doughnut economics of Raworth, versus on the left-hand side in the column the traditional factors of production, Samuelson. And especially one topic is interesting: ownership of natural resources, how to deal with that. And that's also a topic that is very actual at the moment in the discussion about the economic system. Let's continue with multipolarity. Multipolarity is not so new. We see, for instance, Hajduk describes the term as shifts in the distribution of power, and it changed the international order. We went from a, let's say, dominancy of the United States with the unipolarity into new emerging power centers like China, India, Brazil, and other parts of the world. And sometimes it's not only about GDP, but also the availability of raw materials like oil, some rare, let's say, metals that play a role, let's say, in new industries. And the multipolarity is also about topics about what is just and what is fair. Questions that sometimes are not so easy to answer by economists. If you look at, let's say, the development in GDP data, and I still use GDP as a yardstick, but you can also use other, let's say, types of performance indicators, we see that the People's Republic of China is in around 2020 quite high, and one of the highest in the world, together with the United States of America and the European Union 27. We see also 11 years later, and that's of course a forecast, that China is continuing, but also India is rapidly growing. And the average growth rate of, let's say, China and India, they are very, very high. You see similar growth rates, let's say, of about Vietnam, 9.0, that are relatively high. And that also changes the share in the world GDP. So the last table was really an indication of the multipolarity in the world. And in one of the, let's say, more scientific publications of the World Bank, the International Bank for Reconstruction and Development, we see four aspects: the direct channel, the trade channel, the financial channel, and the migration. And there we see, based on that, a index. And there we see in the right-hand side of the graph that things are rapidly changing in the world. Western Europe, the United States, yeah, it's changing, but we see also that China is increasing a lot, and India, based also on the data of the GDP we just saw on the previous slide. My last part of the agenda actually is sustainability and circularity in business. Of course, I will finish also with the very last one, the conclusion discussion. But let's stick first to sustainability and circularity in business. We see that in the multipolar world, a lot of things are changing. We are facing rising greenhouse gases emissions and water and soil pollution. And the one aspect of the spectrum is denial, and the other ones have high priority. This is not new. When I, let's say, started studying economics in the 1970s, I was very much influenced by a book that was not on the list of my, let's say, literature I had to study, Limits to Growth, of the well-known Club of Rome, by Meadows et al. And he used all sorts of growth models. And those were interesting because they forecasted exhaustion of global stocks of raw materials in fossil fuels. And then for a lot of years, nothing happened. In the, let's say, beginning of the 21st century, we see a lot of interesting new developments. Of course, the well-known Doughnut economy model of Kate Raworth, the butterfly model of the Raworth Foundation, and the Regenerative Economics by Fullerton. But there are a lot of more publications. We see that business models have a tendency to change from profit maximization into long-term orientation for stakeholders, not only for shareholders. Another interesting publication is about the trias economica, where we try to split up, let's say, the public power, the financial power, and the company power, like Montesquieu did a long time ago in the trias politica. And of course, an economist like Piketty, he focused very much on the unequal distribution of capital. In the article, I will discuss more about those topics. It means that we have a few allocation mechanisms that play a role. The pure market mechanism or price mechanism is not dominant anymore, like also not dominant in some countries in the world, central planning. We see that, for instance, in China, the People's Republic of China, that central planning is playing a role, but not in a more global way. There's also a mechanism of tradition, like tribes, normally families, they split up the results of production amongst their, let's say, members. And then we have the budget mechanism, often seen as a correction on the market mechanism to influence the economy in a way that is best for all the inhabitants of the economy, dealing with, let's say, too high prices or too low prices, but also prices giving the wrong signal because of negative externalities. We see a new list of criteria to evaluate an economic system. We still have GDP, but we see now a lot of other, let's say, aspects that are playing a role. And I would like to mention a few of them. The well-being monitor of the Central Bureau of Statistics of the Netherlands. Indexes about happiness and love. Ideas about social justice and ethics, democratics and freedom, distribution of income and wealth, like Piketty did, to measure external production, and the efficiency of production, and the ownership of production factors, especially nature. Especially the main question is, who owns nature actually? Is it nature itself, or are it, let's say, countries, or are it, let's say, companies? Then I would like to finalize with the conclusion discussion. I received a lot of feedback from my academic network, that's why I plotted it, about my ideas about diversity of economic systems, the new dimensions, like environmental issues, the social issues, and well-being issues, the many phases of capitalism, and the multipolar world, the BRICS plus world versus the unipolar world of the United States. And these I explain more, of course, and in detail in the article. But interesting is how my network advised me to finalize that in my essay. And they helped me, for instance, to plot the new world, the VUCA world. And sometimes you can disagree a little bit about where the country should be. Some countries I was not able to plot because I missed the information. But here you have an idea how the world is developing. And we see on one hand side, on the right hand side, the fully free market economy with maybe the USA, although we have maybe some questions about how free the economy of the United States is. And we see also a fully central planned economy with the People's Republic of China and Vietnam. Question is, are they a little bit maybe more to the right in the market economy, but for sure having centrally planned influences. That brings me to, let's say, an interesting article of Amaru about the different models of capitalism. And linked to the previous slide, you see that capitalist model have changed a lot. We have the typical liberal market economies, the coordinated market economies, the state-infused capitalism, Mediterranean cluster, and the dependent market economies. And well, some ideas where you should put countries in. It's always difficult to do that, although the author, Mr. gave a link to that. He tried to put countries in a certain, let's say, part of the capitalistic model. That brings me back to one of the first slides of the presentation about the academic network and the academic network I'm in. And especially I would like to look at the long-term aspects. That the dropping off should be higher than the picking up. And because I share a lot in my network, I also get a lot of, let's say, feedback or other information linking to my publications. So I'm very happy that in my network, I really got a lot of, let's say, interesting feedbacks from academics from all over the world to make the essay better. I'm very grateful for that. That brings me to the end of the presentation. I have a few questions, and maybe they might be interesting to answer them during the last part of the session. What is a university? Is the building or a group of people, like professors, teachers, students, developing skills, attitudes, and knowledge. Because I printed it red, I think that is the most accurate definition, not the building. What is a network? Are that legal documents from the managers of the universities, or is the informal group of professors, students in different countries in the world to exchange knowledge, skills, and attitudes? And again, I'm in favor of the red one, but maybe some of you are in favor of the black one. So my idea is in working together in global network is picking up research activities, but also dropping off research activities, and there should be an equilibrium between that. That brings me to my last slide. Any questions? And you see me somewhere in the middle in 2013 in Emmen, in a very interesting network I'm in, European Forum of Logistics Education. And I often have good memories, but also still a lot of exchange of activities. Thank you very much, and I hope we will have a good discussion afterwards.